All right, let's now get into this conversation. The South African government is warning women to be wary of job offers on social media that promise opportunities abroad. This comes after local influencers shared viral videos promoting a Russian program called Alabuga Start, which targets women aged 18 to 22 with offers of international careers, free flights, housing, and even language lessons. Now, authorities fear that such schemes could be a front for human trafficking, especially as the country continues to grapple with high youth unemployment, leaving many young women vulnerable to exploitation. So joining us now to unpack the risks, the red flags, and most importantly, the solutions to protect young women from falling prey to traffickers is the whip of the Portfolio Committee on Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Meagan Chauke-Adonis, founder of the Cheryl Zondi Foundation, Cheryl Zondi, and Director of Wise4Afrika advocate, Brenda Madumise-Pajibo. Thank you so much to you ladies for joining us and for your time this afternoon. Advocate, perhaps let me start with you. As someone who has, fought tirelessly for women's rights, how do we strengthen accountability when digital platforms like the social medias are being used to prey on young women? I mean, should government force platforms to take down, these suspicious recruitment ads more aggressively, do you think? Just your reaction also on this particular matter.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thanks for having me. This is one of the challenges with companies that own these social media platforms that are refusing to be held accountable. They put money up front by buying politicians. So it's been a struggle in many jurisdictions in the world to get from Facebook, which is Meta, to Twitter and everyone else to be held accountable for the kind of content that they platform in all sorts of ways, right? And they're not being held accountable because of the kind of money that they put in politics, right? And 2 years ago, when we went to the UN meeting on women, we dealt with this issue to try and ensure that South African government has got jurisdiction on companies like Meta and Twitter and the rest, so that once there is content that is against the law or even against our law, which is in cybercrime, that you can take action against that company for failure to act, right? And that's very important, because if you don't hold them accountable, they're going to continue to use the excuse that they've got no control over what kind of content is supposed to be on their platform, which is not true, because if you look at Facebook, for instance, they were able to take down many posts that offended their own regulations that they've put through, because they've got individuals who they've, as communities, that sort of sift through the content that needs to be on Facebook, that needs to be on Twitter, and if it meets the standard that they have set for themselves, that content will not be put there. So it can't be that it's different in cases like this, where you deal with human trafficking, sex trafficking, and abuse of women, and cyber violence that happens. It's supposed to be the same, and we need to push and force for that to happen.
I want to just bring in the other panelists. Cheryl, of course, this is one of those terrible conversations to be having, but you've spoken courageously, I might add, about your own survival journey. How do these new online schemes mirror the grooming and the luring tactics that traffickers use? And just also your reaction on this particular one.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon to the ladies as well. It's really heartbreaking to see, young people fall for such schemes. And the thing about it, I think, in this day and age, is it's very difficult to tell the difference between a legitimate, employment offer that you see online and one that is illegitimate. As someone myself who's found employment, on social media, I think my last job is a job that I applied for through TikTok, and it was a legitimate business. business. It was a legitimate virtual talent agency. And so trying to, or being put in a position where you have to do the work of sifting through, who's real and who's not, really puts young women and just youth in general in a very difficult position. There should be systems in place on the back end of these platforms that we're being allowed to, that we're exposed to by the government, by the state. Everyone is encouraging us to know we've been given safety precautions for years on end. I think what the state should be doing, go actually enforcing and safe for us. So some of the things that I pick up, and it's not even a matter of picking up red flags. I think the main issue that is needing to be addressed in this country is our youth is unemployed. The majority of the youth is unemployed. We've got over 60% youth unemployment rate, and these are the people that we're entrusting the future of this country to. Now, if the state would do a better job at making permanent, not temporary, because I know there's a lot of contracts going around giving youth contractual employment that lasts for months, weeks, or 1 year, but permanent solutions to the root cause, which is unemployment. Because if more youth are empowered and have financial stability, there's a chance of the
Cheryl,
kind of scam.
Cheryl, unfortunately, your line keeps breaking, but we'll come back to you, particularly on those last points that you're raising. Ms. Chauke-Adonis, maybe let me bring you in. As we get your reaction, perhaps also comment on how do we strike the balance, especially listening to the other two panelists, between encouraging global opportunities for our young people while also protecting them, especially from exploitation, especially when you consider the country's youth unemployment, as we've been hearing. I mean, it is now sitting at around 45.5%. All right, I don't think Meagan can hear us. But Advocate, maybe let me pose that same question to you, just in terms of, the dangers, when we look at the dangers of these young women that they are facing. When government, in terms of solution mode, where do you think the balance then can be struck, especially with allowing young people to pursue those global opportunities, but also at the same time having systems in place from a government perspective that protects them from exploitation?
So a couple of things that we need to be sensitized to and that we should act on, right? The perils of social media, and I think we're only beginning now to really grapple and understand deeper what social media is capable of doing. It can be a force for good. It can also be a force for, brutality. And we have seen how social media has been used to silence, to get women's rights taken away. It has been used as a weapon to take away women's rights, right? So once we understand the power of that social media and understand the ecosystem of social media and who are the owners of these companies who are profiting from us using their applications, right? So unless we grapple with all of that and understand why is it that it's so difficult for us to hold them accountable in ensuring that we have a safe space within the cyber world, that anyone can be in the cyber world without being violated, without their safety being compromised. So what do you do as a state when you're confronted with something like this that is moving on a daily basis and the changes to it happens faster than anything else, right? Is that you need to put measures in place to counterbalance the possible perils and the harm that might be inflicted on individuals and your citizens, by the way. So that's why we have the Cybercrime Act in the country.
Yeah.
But what we need to, and let me conclude quickly on this, but what we need to accept is that we do not have the expertise in this country to mount the kind of investigation that needs to happen. It's sophisticated, and it requires sophistication even from government itself.
Ms. Chauke-Adonis, I see we have you back. Very importantly, as you respond to that question that the advocate was also speaking to, speak to us about the mechanisms, particularly from a parliament perspective, that you are pushing to just strengthen cross-border collaborations. I mean, we've just seen so many other summits speaking around that. As you respond also and react to this particular discussion, in terms of how do we have these strong measures in place to protect our young women?
Thank you very much, first of all, for the opportunities, and also greetings to your viewers and the panelists as well. I think this is a very important discussion that we should be having, not only as South Africa, but in the continent and also globally. And I think as South Africa, we do have some legislation that really create an opportunity for us to really crack down on human trafficking, but also on misrepresentation and false advertising that actually lure our young girls and boys into becoming either sex slaves, and in the sex trade, or even human trading industry. But I think as part of our responsibilities as members of parliament is to reinforce the legislations that are put in place. So in other words, it means the legislations that are there that speaks about cybersecurity. We're not only focusing on cyberbullying. What does it say about false advertisement? How do we ensure that both communications and the legislation play an active role on cutting down on those who are utilizing social media platforms to actually lure young people and lure those who are looking for opportunities out of the country and utilizing them for other means? The reports that have been shown is that those who take on the opportunities then become low-income earners in the countries that they go into. So they become more workshop workers, and the rates in which they are paid and the conditions are conditions in which, as South Africa, according to us, is against human rights violation. So I think what is important is cross-border collaboration. We need to also, as members of parliament, to look at our legislation. There needs to be a collaborative approach with the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Department of Communications, Digital Technology, Department of Justice, and other departments to see what it is that can be done in order for us, and DIRCA as well, international relations, to see what can be done in order for us to really protect our children and users who are utilizing our digital platform. But also the responsibility should be lying on
Ms.
the
Chauke,
owners and the shareholders of those social media platforms, such as your TikTok.
Ms. Chauke, I'm sorry, we are running fast of time. I wonder, before I pose my last question, just go back to Cheryl, just in terms of, some of the statements that are being made here by especially Ms. Chauke-Adonis as well as advocate. Based on your foundation's work, what do you see as the biggest blind spot in how communities recognize, some of the red flags? What I'm wanting you to advise here is the young women. What are some of those red flags that they should immediately spot?
I think young women across the country know exactly what red flags to spot. I mean, we've been raised on red flags, and at this point it's in our blood and it's in our nature to seek out. I mean, we are as vigilant as humanly possible, so I think what we should be focusing on is not advising young women on how to be even safer, but to put the people who hold positions in the powers that be and hold them accountable and say, look, I'm hearing talks about legislation in terms of cybersecurity. What are we doing to ensure that our cyberspaces, our social media spaces that we are being exposed to in this country are safe enough for us to use? It's far too easy for any kind of business. I can wake up today and decide I wanna start a business, and it's far too easy to create a business account on social media. There are no steps taken on social media that actually verify the legitimacy of businesses, to see if they're registered, to see if they're actually legal. So these are things that should be done, and the onus, I feel, should not be falling on the youth anymore, because the youth have been told time and time again what not to do, where not to go. And I mean, if the state and the people that are in charge of these social networks and social media platforms aren't responsible enough to make them safe for their users, then honestly we're at a loss if we're busy advising each other on how to make it to keep ourselves safe.
All right, as we wrap up our conversation, ladies, I want to ask you all the same question. All of you work with women on the margins, whether you're in parliament, civil society, or survivor support. How do we move then, very quickly, if you can, from awareness campaigns to real measurable change that keeps really our young people safe, especially when you consider that on the other side of that glamorous overseas job offer on TikTok or any other social media platform is a young 16, 17, 18-year-old? Let's start with you very quickly, Advocate.
So we've been talking ad nauseum as a country about multi-sectoral collaboration, and it has not yielded any results because we're still working in silos in different ways, whether it's the private sector, whether it's civil society, whether it's government. The National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence was meant to foster a coordinated response to violence. But remember, you're not just talking about a collaboration and coordinated response on gender-based violence in isolation of everything else, whether it's education, whether it's health, whether it's the economy, whether it's the design of transport system, you can't be talking about exposing your young people who are on the margins of being at risk of getting into precarious positions or jobs because you have failed to do what you have been requested to do, to make sure that you collaborate and you coordinate your interventions, you collaborate and coordinate your responses as a country instead of this silo mentality that exists. And that's why we don't see the impact that we are supposed to make, because we are all over the show. We pulled from one direction to another, so we're not collaborative. So if we want to have the kind of impact that we are looking for and the scale that we are looking for, that collaboration must happen in earnest, and it can't happen through the Ministry of Women alone. That ministry is not there for women alone. It's that every government department in this country has got a stake in ensuring that women and young women in this country are safe.
Ms. Chauke-Adonis, your take on this? I mean, how do we make sure that we are not working over each other but coordinating effectively?
I do agree with the doctor as well in terms of cross collaboration that needs to take place. And cross collaboration means there are various stakeholders, from government to civil society to individuals. And I think this collaboration is equally important for us to really monitor what then takes place in our country, but also to have an oversight on the legislations that are passed. We must understand that legislation are put in place in order for us to ensure that we are meeting what our constitutional mandate are, to protect the rights of all South Africans. But in truth, if we as citizens and civil society and government do not collaborate, and the private sector in the implementation of those legislation, then it becomes a fruitless exercise. But also taking into consideration, as a member of a portfolio committee in communications as well, outside of women, youth, and persons with disabilities, the issue of not having better regulations on your social media platforms, including your TikTok, your YouTube, and other platform, is our greatest challenge. But also creating more awareness, and awareness should take place even at our primary level, where they should be able to utilize the technology and should be able to utilize social media and the internet in a safe way. But I think also we must also put responsibility.
All right. That sounded also very shaky there. I do apologize, Ms. Chauke. Cheryl, let's end with you. Just your take. How do we move from awareness campaigns to concrete measures in place to protect the young people of South Africa?
All right, I didn't quite hear your question, but I think I got the gist of it. From awareness enforcement is something that's important. Our ears have been talked off in terms of awareness. I don't think, I highly doubt I can bump into one member of the youth in this country who isn't aware and isn't aware of the signs and things to look out for in terms of red flags on these platforms. What needs to happen is the different departments in our state need to talk to each other instead of working in isolation. Like the advocate said, transport needs to be talking to education. Education needs to be talking to women. Like this needs to be a disruptive system that starts, like Ms. Chauke said, at primary level. And then it needs to actually work. You know, it's one thing to have legislation that looks pretty on paper, but it's a whole other thing to actually enforce it. There needs to be consequences to actions, otherwise nothing is going to change.
Thank you so much to you, to all three of you ladies. Thank you. I really do appreciate it as we wrap up the Women's Day coverage, Women's Month coverage rather, that we've been having here on the channel. Very important discussions. Thank you so much to our panelists, of course, Committee on Women, in fact, on Committee on Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Ms. Meagan Chauke-Adonis there, and the founder of the Cheryl Zondi Foundation, Cheryl Zondi herself, and Director of Wise4Afrika, Advocate Brenda Madumise-Pajibo. Of course, this was all centered around the fact that government is warning young women to be wary of just these job offers on social media, opportunities abroad, particularly those that are meant to lure young people for other things, other criminal elements, including trafficking.